हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. So we will start from Sloka 22. We have been seeing in the second canto, chapter 1 and chapter 2, about the aspects of meditation on the Virata Rupa and also the meditation on the Paramatma feature of the Lord in the heart. Right, so we are in that flow. So gradually it will be taken up till the point of pure devotional service unto the Lord. Right. So text 22. Let's read this. Yadi prayasyan nripaparameshyam वैहायसानां मुतयद्विहारम् अष्टाधिपत्यं गुणसन्निवाये सहैव गच्छेन् मनसेन्द्रियैश्च. Okay. However, O king, if a yogi maintains a desire for improved material enjoyment, like transfer to the topmost planet Brahmaloka, or the achievement of eightfold perfection, travel in the outer space with the Vaihayasas, or a situation in one of the millions of planets, then he has to take away from with him the materially molded mind and senses. So here we see that these are various material destinations that are there. So here we see that Brahmaloka, going to the Brahmaloka, or getting the Ashta Siddhis, eightfold perfections, and then traveling in the outer space, and then or he has some desire to go to any of the material planets. So then he has to carry his materially molded mind and senses. So the mind and senses, basically the forms the subtle body. The mind is there, then automatically based on that a gross body is achieved. So the subtle body of mind, intelligence and false ego, it doesn't till the time we are there in this material world, this covering is always there. We may lose the gross body, we may lose the body which is made of panchabhuta, but then we will not lose this mind, intelligence and false ego. That is a subtle body, and if we get out of that body, that means liberation. That means we have got liberated. So here in the sloka it is mentioned, if we aim at any of the material destinations, so then the subtle body is not finished. We have to carry on our subtle body, right? And based on the subtle body, based on the state of the mind, the gross body will be designed. Just like we may sometime become obese, or we may sometime become thin and things like that. Based on that, our dress measurement also changes. So in the same way, what is the state of the mind, based on that the gross body is awarded, right? So that's gross body is designed, tailored according to the mind that is there. So purport: in the upper status of the planetary systems, there are facilities thousands and thousands of times greater for material enjoyments than in the lower planetary systems. The topmost planetary system consists of the planet of Brahmaloka and Dhruvaloka, the pole star, and all of them are situated beyond Makaraloka. The inhabitants of those planets are empowered with eightfold achievements of mystic perfection. So this, all these planets which are situated beyond Makaraloka. So like we know that Janaloka, Tapaloka, Maharloka, Satyaloka, and all these things. So these are all different lokas that are there, the upper 7 planetary systems that are there. So all the planets which are above the Makaraloka, and also these planets like, of course, Brahmaloka is above the Makaraloka, and then Dhruvaloka is also there. So these planets, those of whom are normal residents of these planets, all of them have Ashtasiddhis by default. Right from birth they have these siddhis, and then they do not have to learn and practice the mystic process of yoga perfection and achieve the power of becoming small like a particle, anima siddhi, the lighter than the soft feather, lagima siddhi, and they do not have to get anything and everything from anywhere and everywhere. That is prapti siddhi. Prapti means whatever we desire from any part of the world, we can get it at this point in time. So that siddhi is called prapti siddhi. and then to become heavier than the heaviest, that is Mahima Siddhi, and then to act freely, even to create something wonderful or annihilate anything at will. So that is Ishitva, Ishitva Siddhi. And then to control all material planets, that is Vashitva Siddhi. And to possess such power as will never be frustrated in any desire, that is Prakamya Siddhi. Or to assume any shape or form one may even whimsically desire, that is Kama Kama Vasayitha Siddhi. So generally the demons possess all these siddhis, and that's how they're able to, like we see that Putana, she like disguised herself as a nurse and she came to kill Krishna, right? So she had all these siddhis. She was able to fly in the air, she was able to change her form and things like that. So demons generally they possess all these siddhis. They try to perform tapasya and try to get these siddhis. So generally, like meditation process, like people used to do to get these siddhis, and demoniac people are very expert in getting these siddhis, and they kind of this is the purpose for which they do, the yoga process and all. Anyways, so all these expediencies are as common as natural gifts for the inhabitants of those in the higher planets. They do not require any mechanical help to travel in outer space, and they can move and travel at will from one planet to any other planet within no time. The inhabitants of Earth cannot move even to the nearest planet except by mechanical vehicles like spacecraft, but the highly talented inhabitants of such higher planets can do everything very easily. Since a materialist is generally inquisitive to experience what is actually in such planetary system, he wants to see everything personally. As inquisitive persons tour all over the world to gain direct local experience, the less intelligent transcendentalists similarly desire to have some experience of those planets about which he has heard so many wonderful things. So like generally the yogis, they get an idea, okay, fine, let me go there and see what's there over there, and things like that. And the materialists, who are like scientists and all, so they don't have any experience of any of these things. They just directly want to go there by their mechanical arrangement, by making some spacecraft and things like that. So that is not possible. It is not possible for them to reach out like that. So even in this world, we have what is it, immigration, and so much of checks when we go from one country to another. So how can we just think that we can just go to any other planet? So just like that. So even the moon landing, what is there, so even that is also a hoax. And one many times this question has been raised, if people could able to go to moon before, and why are the people are not able to go now? And then in fact the scientists who were involved in the moon landing, this one, so they were themselves astonished because it was a political game that was played. And the scientists themselves were astonished that how did this happen, because they were kept out of the scene, and then other people were taken into, and then many people say that it has been orchestrated in a kind of a desert kind of an area. And then all the people who were involved in that mission, they were all mysteriously killed also. So in that way, like there are many, this ones are there. Even if we see the moon landing video, there it is mentioned that there is only source of light is the sun, but then we see like 3-4 shadows. So that means it is like an orchestrated thing, like people are keeping different focus lights and things like that and all, and it has been orchestrated actually. So if it is so, then why not now people can go? No, it is not possible for people to go now. So like then how do we believe that at that point in time people went? And also like to penetrate the different layers in the in the atmosphere, like topographic this ones. So it is at certain layers, it is quite quite hot, and none of the metals that we use for the spacecraft will even sustain over there, right? So it's basically like it is unbelievable that many a times it is mostly political game that has been played, when people say that we are sending things to other planets and things like that and all. So why not, we have not yet started some real estate over there, why not people can go there and things like that. So it's a big question over there. No, it is not that easy to go to these different planets. And even after they go to these different planets, no, the scriptures say that no, they're all intelligent and more powerful beings are there. Why are these people going and picking up some rocks and coming? That means they have not gone anywhere. So our acharyas are very clear. Like Srila Prabhupada used to say, these people have definitely not gone there because they are just simply picking up some rocks and coming. So definitely they have not gone there, right? So this is our conviction, and the science is also like many scientists also have this difference of opinion. Not everybody believes in this moon landing and the spacecrafts going to other planets and things like that. Okay, so yeah, so we will get back to the purport. The yogi can, however, easily fulfill his desire by going there with the present materialistic mind and senses. The prime inclination of the materialistic mind is to lord it over the material world, and all the siddhis mentioned above are features of domination over the world. The devotees of the Lord are not ambitious to dominate a false and temporary phenomenon. Right? So why do these yogis want to go to different planets, and why do the scientists want to go to different planets? Because they want to go and even in the moon landing also they show that American flag has been hoisted over there, right? So they just want to say that like no, we have conquered this territory and things like that. So that's the primary purpose for which either the scientists or politicians or even the yogis who have achieved siddhis, they want to go to different places just to show their dominion over the temporary material world. But then devotees of the Lord, they know Isha Vashamidam Sarvam Etkincham Jagatyam Jagat Tena Taktena Bunjita Mahadgrada Kasya Suddhanam. So the devotees of the Lord know that everything that exists is property of Lord, and no, I don't need to struggle hard to like establish my supremacy over here. I'll be there for some time and I'll have to vacate my place and I'll have to go back, right? So in that way, the this one the devotees of the Lord, they are not wanting to create dominion over this temporary phenomenon, this material world, and they want to transfer themselves to the spiritual planets. Okay. On the contrary, a devotee wants to be dominated by the supreme predominator, the Lord. A desire to serve the Lord. The supreme predominator is spiritual or transcendental, and one has to attain this purification of the mind and the senses to get admission into the spiritual kingdom. So, rather on the contrary, the devotees are not thinking to um, like uh, uh, prove their dominance over this material world, but they want to be dominated by the Supreme Lord. They want to be servants of the Supreme Lord. So that's opposite that they are thinking of. With the materialistic mind, one can reach the best planet in the universe, but no one can enter into the kingdom of God. Senses are called spiritually purified when they are not involved in sense gratification. Senses require engagement, and when the senses are engaged totally in transcendental loving service of the Lord, they have no chance to become contaminated by material infections. Okay, so next sloka 23. Yogeshwaranam gatimahurantar bahistrilokya pravanantar atmanam na karmabhistam gatimapnuvanti vidya tapo yoga samadhi vajam. The transcendentalists are concerned with the spiritual body. As such, by the strength of their devotional service, austerities, mystic power, and transcendental knowledge, their movements are unrestricted within and beyond the material worlds. The fruitive workers or the gross materialist can never move in such an unrestricted manner. So this is like this talking about the perfectly spiritualized people, and perfectly realized people. So their movements are not restricted by the time or space. No, their movements are not restricted by the time and space. But then the gross materialist and fruitive workers, they are restricted to this material world. So if a devotee leaves the body, he goes to the spiritual world. He knows the art of going to the spiritual world. But then the materialist and the like fruity workers and the gross materialists, no, they cannot move, they cannot go to such places, right? So okay, now let's see the purport. The materialistic scientist endeavor to reach other planets by mechanical vehicles is only a futile attempt. One can, however, reach heavenly planets by virtuous activities, but one can never expect to go to the Swarga or Janaloka by such mechanical or materialistic activities, either gross or subtle. Okay. So if we accumulate punya, then we can go to the higher planetary systems, and not by mechanical arrangement. No, that's what is mentioned here. Even Ravana wanted to create a staircase to the heavenly planets, but then it didn't happen. So the transcendentalists who have nothing to do with the gross material body can move anywhere within or beyond the material worlds. Within the material worlds, they move in the planetary systems of Mahar, Janas, Tapas, and Satyaloka, and beyond the worlds, they can move into Vaikunthas as unrestricted spacemen. Narad Muni is one of the example of such spacemen, and Durvasa Muni is one such mystics. By the strength of devotional service, austerities, mystic power, and transcendental knowledge, everyone can move like Narada or Durvasa. Durvasa Muni. It is said that Durvasa Muni traveled throughout the entire material space and part of spiritual space within 1 year only. The speed of the transcendentalists can never be attained by gross or subtle materialists. Okay. So they are really very powerful, the transcendentalists are. Okay. Vaishvanaram yati vihaya sadata sushumna ya brahma patena sochisa vidhuta kalkota hare udastad prayati chakram nipasishu maram. Okay. O king, when such mystics pass over the Milky Way by the illuminating Sushumna to reach the highest planet, Brahmaloka, he goes first to Vaishvanara, the planet of the deity of fire, wherein he becomes completely cleansed of all contaminations, and thereafter he still goes higher to the circle of Sushumara to relate with the Lord, Lord Hari, the personality of Godhead. Okay. So, okay, purport. The pole star of the universe and the circle thereof is called Sushumara circle. And therein the local residential planet of the personality of Godhead, Shirodakshaya Vishnu, is situated. So this we had studied when we studied about the Paramatma feature of the Lord. So that time, we studied about this pole star. Pole star, there the Shirodakshaya Vishnu is there. That's where the milk ocean is there, and that's where the Shira Udaka Shai, or means the Shira Udaka means like milk ocean, and Shai means like one who is lying on the milk ocean. So Shira Udaka Shai Vishnu, Shira Udaka Shaya Vishnu. So this Vishnu is situated in the pole star, and then keeping the pole star as the pivotal point, there is a circle of stars that are there, and they are called as Sushumara, or in Sushumara means like dolphin. So they look like a dolphin in the sky, and the pole star is the central point, and all these other stars and planets which are connected to that pole star, so they appear to be in the form of the Sushumara, this form of a dolphin. Right, so this is astronomical thing. It's the realized transcendentalists, they could able to reach this pinnacle of the Sushumara circle. So that is the pole star planet. That's the Dhruva Nakshatra. Right? And before reaching there, the mystics pass over the Milky Way to reach Brahmaloka. And while going there, he first reaches Vaishvanara Loka, where the demigod controls fire. On Vaishvanara Loka, the yogi becomes completely cleansed of all dirty sins acquired while in contact with the material world. The Milky Way in the sky is indicated herein as the way leading to Brahmaloka, the highest planet of the universe. Okay, so next loka. Tad Vishwanabhim Tva Ativartya Vishnor Aniyasha Vaira Jainatmanaika Namaskritam Brahma Vidam Upaithi Kalpa Yusho Yad Vibhudaramante. This Sushumara is the pivot for the turning of complete universe. and it is called the navel of Vishnu, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. The yogi alone goes beyond the circle of Sushumar and attains the planet Makaraloka, where purified saints like Bhrigu enjoy a duration of life which is equivalent to, okay, this is a huge number, how much it is, 430 crores solar years. This planet is worshipable even for saints who are transcendently situated. So as I told before, the Sushumara is the pivot for the pole star is the pivot of the whole Sushumara circle, and the Sushumara is the pivot of the whole complete universe. This is the central portion of the complete universe, and then they kind of because it's the central part, so it is considered to be the Nabi of the Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. So Garbhodakshaya Vishnu is the next Vishnu. Like Garbhodaka means like the source of this like 14 planetary system. So wherein this Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, from his navel comes the lotus flower, and in the lotus flower, Lord Brahma takes birth, and the central point of the stem of this lotus flower is the Sushumara circle, right? So, and this all the 14 planetary system resides on the stem of this lotus flower, which comes from the Garbhodakshaya Vishnu's navel. So sometimes people think that this is all quite fantastic, or this is all quite it looks to be like unbelievable and things like that. So whatever the Lord does, he does it artistically. Sometime back we had discussed this. So the Lord wants to bring the water to the planetary systems here, or near our place, and then cause the rain to happen. So when we have to do it, like we engage huge trucks and things like that, and also it is quite it's not that pleasant actually. So but then when the Lord wants to transfer water, so he just evaporates, makes them into clouds, and then he brings it anywhere and everywhere he wants, and then he just causes the rain to happen. And it's quite artistic. Many people have written poems on the clouds and things like that. So the Lord does things in an artistic way. He doesn't need to do things in a mechanical way. We don't need to think the universal creation in a mechanical way. He does everything very artistically. Even the planetary systems that are there below the pole star, it's arranged in the form of a Sushumara, like a dolphin. And realized souls, like they can, in their meditation, they can see all these planetary systems being in this form, transcendental form of dolphin, right? So above the Sushumara, this one above the pole star is the center of the universe, and then above the pole star starts the Maharaloka, and after that comes like other lokas, like Janaloka, Tapaloka, and stuffs like that, right? So okay. Ato anantasya mukanalena dan dahyamanam saniriksha vishvam niryati siddheshwara yushta dishnyam yadvi praradhyam tadu parameshtyam. At the time of final devastation of the complete universe, the end of the duration of Brahma's life, a flame of fire emanates from the mouth of Ananta, from the bottom of the universe. The yogi sees all the planets of the universe burning to ashes, and thus he leaves for Satyaloka by air planets airplanes used by great purified souls. The duration of life in Satyaloka is calculated to be, it's a huge number. So it's beyond, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's somewhere around 15 lakhs crores years or something like that. So that's the duration of. So 430 crore years is one day of Brahma, and 430 crore years of hours is one night of Brahma, and such he lives for 100 years, and that's the calculation, that's the number that is put here. Okay, so it is indicated herein that the residents of Maharaloka, where the purified living entities or demigods possess a duration of life calculated to be 430 crores. I think so, yeah, 430 crores solar years, have airships by which they reach Satyaloka, the topmost planet of the universe. In other words, the Srimad Bhagavatam gives us many clues about other planets far, far away from us, which modern planes and spacecrafts cannot reach, even by imaginary speed. The statement of Srimad Bhagavatam are accepted by great acharyas like Sridhar Swami, Ramanujacharya, Vallabhacharya, etc. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu specifically accepts Srimad Bhagavatam as the spotless Vedic authority, and as such, no sane man can ignore the statements of Srimad Bhagavatam when it is spoken by the self-realized soul, Srila Sukadeva Goswami, who follow in the footsteps of his great father, Srila Vyasadeva, the compiler of all Vedic literature. In the creation of the Lord, there are many wonderful things we can see with our own eyes every day and night, but we are unable to reach them, equipped by modern materialistic science. We should not, therefore, depend on fragmentary authority of materialistic science for knowing things beyond the range of scientific purview. For a common man, both modern science and Vedic wisdom are simply to be accepted because none of their statements, either of modern science or Vedic literature, can be verified by him. The alternative for a common man is to believe either of them or both of them. The Vedic way of understanding, however, is more authentic because it has been accepted by the acharyas, who are not only faithful and learned men but also liberated souls without any of the flaw of conditioned souls. So we had seen the conditioned souls have four kinds of defects: Brahma, Pramada, Vipralipsa, and Karna Patava. So that is tendency to commit mistake, tendency to become illusion, and imperfect senses, and from and then tendency to become illusioned. I don't know which one I left. So, anyways, so these different flaws are there. So, but then the liberated souls, they don't have these kind of flaws because they are beyond the bodily consciousness, and they can even see all these planets by their meditation and things like that. So when such acharyas accept the scriptures and such acharyas accepts the version of the Srimad Bhagavatam, so then it is very safe for us to understand and accept it, right? So the modern scientists, however, are conditioned souls liable to so many errors and mistakes. Therefore, the safe side is to accept the authentic version of Vedic literatures like Srimad Bhagavatam, which is accepted and unanimously by the great acharyas. Okay. Nayatra shokho na jara na mrityur narthir na chodvega rithe kutaschet yachit tato the kripaya nidam vidham duranta dukkha prabhavanu darshanat. In that planet of Satyaloka, there is neither bereavement, nor old age, nor death. There is no pain of any kind, and therefore there are no anxieties, save that sometimes due to consciousness, there is a feeling of compassion for those unaware of the process of devotional service, who are subjected to unsurpassable miseries in the material world. So in Satyaloka, generally there is no old age, there is no anxieties, and there is no death also. Only thing is, at the end of the universe, at the end of life of Lord Brahma, so everything in the whole material world is annihilated, and there is in the beginning of the this one universe, they come into existence, and only at the end of the universe they actually become disintegrated. So they don't need to take so many times birth and death, birth and death, birth and death, and things like that. So there the life seems to be little more permanent, little more long lasting, but then still it is in comparison to the eternal time. So they have to give up their bodies when the universal dissolution is happening. And this universal dissolution, when it happens, yashaika nishvashita kala matavalambya, so that means it is one breath time of Mahavishnu, or Karanodakshaya Vishnu, the third Vishnu, right? So this Karanodakshaya Vishnu, when he breathes out, unlimited universes comes in, and then when he inhales, all the universes are destroyed. So this one breathing period of Mahavishnu is 100 years of Lord Brahma. And in one day of Lord Brahma, there are 1,000 cycles of Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali. And in one such cycle of Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali, in one such Kali Yuga we are living in. So we can imagine the length of Mahavishnu's breath but then it is a time dilation. It's kind of Mahavishnu feels it like one breath time, and even Lord Brahma feels his 100 years to be like normal 100 years like what we have. But then it's the different scale of time functions in different planes. No, that's the uh, um, no, that's the proposition over there. So basically, like, they live a long life, Satyaloka, but then they have to give up their life at certain point in time, right? So yeah, so mostly people in the Satyaloka are purified souls. At the time of universal dissolution, they will generally be transferred to the Vaikuntha Lokas. But then if they have some attachment to the material world, they will go down. Shine Punya Mrityulokam Vishanti. So they may go down to other planetary systems in the next cycle of creation. Okay. Purport. Foolish men of materialistic temperament do not take advantage of successive authorized knowledge. The Vedic knowledge is authorized and is acquired by experiment. Uh, just a minute. The Vedic knowledge is authorized and is acquired not by experiment but by authentic statements of Vedic literature explained by bona fide authorities. Simply by becoming an academic scholar, one cannot understand the Vedic statements. One has to approach the real authority who has received the Vedic knowledge by disciplic succession, as clearly explained in Bhagavad Gita 4.2. Lord Krishna affirmed that the system of knowledge as explained in the Bhagavad Gita was explained to the sun god, and the knowledge descended by disciplic succession from sun god to his son Manu, and from Manu to King Ikshvaku, the forefather of Lord Ramachandra. And thus the system of knowledge was explained down the line of great sages, one after another. But in due course of time, the authorized succession was broken, and therefore, just to re-establish the true spirit of knowledge, the Lord again explained the same knowledge to Arjuna, who was a bona fide candidate for understanding due to his being a pure devotee of the Lord. Bhagavad Gita, as it was understood by Arjuna, is also explained but there are many foolish men who do not follow in the footsteps of Arjuna in understanding the spirit of Bhagavad Gita. They create instead their own interpretations, which are as foolish as they themselves, and thereby only help to put a stumbling block on the path of real understanding, misdirecting the innocent followers who are less intelligent or Shudras. So basically, here it's mentioned about the aspects of, if we interpret this knowledge, which is given in Bhagavad Gita, so then we will not progress. Rather, we will put stumbling blocks in our proper understanding or progress in spiritual life, and also we will misdirect innocent followers, and who are less intelligent. Probably they are Shudras. So such people will be misdirected by wrong interpretations of the scriptures, the Bhagavad Gita. It's like taking a route map and then saying changing some lefts and rights here and there. So we will be misled in our path, right? The same way, like, these scriptures have to be understood and followed as it is, and they cannot be experimented with. And it is said that one should become a Brahmana before one can understand the Vedic statements. And this stricture is as important as the stricture that no one shall become a lawyer who has not qualified himself as a graduate. We can even say that no one can become a surgeon without being qualified as a MBBS doctor, and then further studies and things like that and all. So then a person is allowed to do an operation, right? So in the same way, the Vedic scriptures are meant to show us the path in the darkness of this world. And unless a person becomes a Brahmana, that means self-controlled, he can keep his senses under control. Unless he does that, he should not take up to the activity of teaching the Vedic scriptures or studying the Vedic scriptures so independently, right? So he should be guided by a Brahmana, or either he himself should be a Brahmana. Otherwise, he should not play with the Vedic scriptures. It can it can work in a wrong way, right? So such a structure is not an impediment in the progress, in the path of progress for anyone and everyone, but it is necessary for an unqualified understanding of a particular science. So unqualified understanding of a particular science means unbiased. It's basically, the meaning is, if we have to have an unbiased understanding of the Vedic knowledge, then no such kind of a structure is necessary. No necessary qualification needs to be attained before we get into a particular field of activity. So even in this material world, like for any profession for that matter, here lawyer is taken, and then we talked about this one, what is it, being a doctor. So even for the material engagements, material science, which can be verified now with our pratyaksha praman, with our direct sense perception, still we require qualification. Then what to speak of the becoming a Brahmin, being eligible to study the Vedic scriptures and to guide people. So we need to be Brahmanas ourselves. So otherwise it is not possible for us to like guide people in that way, right? Okay, so Vedic knowledge is misinterpreted by those who are not qualified Brahmanas. A uh, qualified Brahmana is one who has undergone strict training under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. The Vedic wisdom guides us to understanding our relation with the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna and to acting accordingly in order to achieve the desired result of returning home back to Godhead. So Vedic wisdom is meant to guide us, no path back to the spiritual world to attain the lotus feet of Krishna. But materialistic men do not understand this. They want to make a plan to become happy in a place where there is no happiness. No, they want to become like, no, they want to make this dukkalayam sukhalayam. So that is not possible, right? For false happiness, they try to reach other planets either by Vedic rituals or by spacecraft, but they should know for certain that any amount of materialistic adjustments for becoming happy in a place which is meant for distress cannot benefit the misguided man, because after all, the whole universe with all its paraphernalia will come to an end after a certain period. Right? Then all plans of materialistic happiness will automatically come to an end. Right? So we know many people had many plans not to do at this point in time, but then this small virus have come and made everything topsy-turvy. And many people were in good positions and things like that. So now because of this, like so many people had to lose their jobs or lose their lives and things like that and all. So this material world is not a safe place. No, we should take this matter very seriously. Sometimes people ask, like, why is God doing all these things and things like that? So when we were exploiting the resources of nature, so that time, if anybody would have asked, like, why are you exploiting this nature like this? So no, we don't have any answer. But then reactions for it comes, then we ask, like, what is God doing, right? So like, where was your God when you were exploiting this material nature? That's the question that we ask. Like, no, God was always there. Why are you bringing him into picture now? But if you have not believed God in the like when things were going good, and why you are bringing in God in picture now? So now also you should not bring in God in the picture. So you were doing everything and you are getting the reaction. So like, why should we bring in God in the picture now, right? So if we have God in the picture, then we can understand, yeah, like he is just avoiding the punishments for all the mischief that we have done. And we have to take note, and very important thing as spiritualists, we have to take note, this world is not a safe place, and we have to prepare ourselves for getting back to the spiritual world. That's a very important thing. We have to prepare ourselves to get back to the spiritual world. So in this way we can see that the life is very transient here, and if we try to make plans to become happy here, it'll always be frustrated. No, one way or another, it will always be frustrated. We have to make plans to go back home, back to Godhead, the Vaikuntha planets. That's where our destination should be. Okay. Then the intelligent person therefore makes a plan to return home back to Godhead. Such an intelligent person surpasses all the pangs of material existence, like birth, death, disease, and old age. He is actually happy because he has no anxieties of material existence. But as a compassionate sympathizer, he feels unhappiness for the suffering materialistic men. And thus, he occasionally comes before the materialistic men to teach them the necessity of going back to Godhead. All the bona fide acharyas preach this truth of returning home back to Godhead and warn men not to make a false plan for happiness in a place where happiness is only a myth. No? So sometimes we call spirituality as mythology, right? So that's the irony of the whole thing. right? So this world is a mythology, like this happiness in this world is a mythology, but then we call spirituality as mythology, so spirituality is science, and the science what we call in the modern day, that's actually a myth, like so there is no permanent way of making things happy, right? So let's not try to make this dukkhalayam a sukhalayam. Dukkhalayam will remain dukkhalayam. We should be we should try to be like tolerant, and we should try to be forbearing in the phases of difficulties in this world, and then we should try to progress towards the spiritual world, right? So that's the main thing. Text 28. Tato vishesham pratipadya nirbhayas tenatmanapho nala murtirat atvaran jyotirmayo vayum upetya kale va vaivatmana kam brihadatma lingam. Okay. After reaching Satyaloka, the devotee is specifically able to be incorporated fearlessly by the subtle body in an identity similar to that of the gross body. And one after another, he gradually attains stages of existence from earthly to watery, fiery, glowing, and airy until he reaches the ethereal stage. Okay. So this is one very important thing. The people in the higher planetary system, especially in the Brahmaloka, so they have bodies like ethereal body, so ethereal body means they don't have a body like us, where the Panchabhuta is the main elements, like earth, water, fire, air, ether is the main earth, water and all is the main elements, right? So, and we call as Jataragni, like the fire is there in the stomach which digests the food. So in that way, like here it is mentioned, the sages, like who are the yogis who go to the Satyaloka, gradually they transform their existence from earthly to watery to fiery, and then glowing, and then finally airy, and until until he reaches the ethereal stage, ethereal body. The higher planets like Satyaloka, they don't they have material bodies, but then these material bodies are so subtle, they have very, very subtle kind of the material bodies. And it is mentioned, Lord Brahma's body is completely made of intelligence. We cannot even think of that, only intelligence. And you don't have other elements so prominent. Other elements could be there, but it's very, very small. But then this whole personification, he's a personification of intelligence. It's quite difficult to understand. But then as the higher planetary systems we go, the bodies become subtler and subtler. The gross bodies doesn't exist over there. Okay. So approach purport. Anyone who can reach Brahmaloka or Satyaloka by dint of spiritual perfection and practice is qualified to attain three different types of perfection. One who has attained a specific planet by dint of pious activities, attain places in terms of his comparative pious activities. One who has attained the place by dint of Virat or Hiranyagarbha worship is liberated along with the liberation of Brahma. But one who has attained the place by dint of devotional service is specifically mentioned here in relation to how he can penetrate into different coverings of the universe and thus ultimately disclose his spiritual identity in the absolute atmosphere of supreme existence. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, all the universes are clustered together up and down, and each and every one of them is separately each and every one of them is separately sevenfold covered. So sevenfold covering is like, sometimes this example is given like a coconut and its shell, right? So in the coconut, if we see, like there is a white pulp is there, then there is a thick covering is there, then there is a huge like a bushy or fibrous kind of a covering is there. There are different kinds of shells that are there. So exactly in the same way, this material world is covered by earth, water, fire, air, ether as one layers of shells, and then within that a small space is there. That's where the whole 14 planetary system that is existing, right? So these kind of coverings are there, like the sevenfold coverings are there. The watery portion, okay, so we'll continue the purport. The watery portion is beyond the sevenfold covering, and each covering is 10 times more expansive than the previous covering. The personality of Godhead who creates all such universes by his breathing period lies above the cluster of universes. The water of the causal ocean is differently situated than the covering water of the universe. Okay, so there is this earth, water, fire, air, ether. No, there also there is water is there, and then finally all this coverings, the whole universe with all its coverings is there present on the causal ocean. No, it's like a ball floating on the causal ocean, like that, right? So okay, the water of the causal ocean is differently situated than the covering water of the universe. The water that serves as covering for the universe is material, whereas the water of causal ocean is spiritual. As such, the watery covering mentioned herein is considered to be the false egoistic covering of all living entities, and the gradual process of liberation from the material coverings, one after another, as mentioned herein, is the gradual process of being liberated from false egoistic conceptions of material gross body, and then being absorbed in the identification of the subtle body till attainment of the pure spiritual body in the absolute realm of kingdom of God. So here it's this yogic process, no, is like first, no, you release the earthly component from your body, then you release the watery component from the body, then we release the fiery component from the body. So in this way, one by one, all the various components are relinquished, and finally what remains is the pure soul, and then he can be transferred to the spiritual world. So this is the yogic process of achieving the liberation. But we don't do this thing. No, we just simply perform devotional service, and then whatever is needed, the Lord actually does and take us back to Godhead. So pure devotees are completely like helpless children, and no, helpless children, no, even though they don't know to eat, even though they don't know to use a toilet and things like that, the parents, they actually take care of all these things. So in the same way, for devotees, no, Krishna takes care of all these things personally. But then the yogis, no, who are no yoga mishra bhaktas, like no, who are mixed devotees, so they may perform these kind of circuses, and they may perform relinquishing all these various koshas, no, the various portions of their body, bodily existence, and then gradually get liberation. But then a devotee doesn't need to do that. Devotee simply, he just depends on the Lord, and Lord takes care of these various things. Okay, so Srila Sridhar Swami confirms that apart from confirms that a part of the material nature after being initiated by the Lord is known as Mahatattva, and a fractional portion of the Mahatattva is called the false ego. A portion of ego is the vibration of sound, and a portion of sound is atmospheric air. A portion of airy atmosphere is turned into forms, and the forms constitute the power of electricity or heat. Heat produces the smell of the aroma of the earth, and the gross earth is produced by such aroma, and all these combined together constitute the cosmic phenomenon. So what is explained here is the whole manifestation of this whole material world. So Mahatattva is a sum total of all material energy, and then the fraction of portion of Mahatattva is false ego, no, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego, right? So this false ego, a portion of the false ego is vibration of sound. No, sound vibration actually comes from there, and from sound vibration, ether is produced, atmospheric air, and from there the next sense object is produced, that is the form, and from form comes the subsequent things, like from form comes the heat and electricity, fire comes, and from fire comes the sense of smell, and from it is like the sense object comes, and then first the sense object comes, and then the particular object particular element of the Panchabhuta gets manifested. So in that way, like gradually this thing comes. It's a quite technical thing. Anyways, we can just say that in a simple terms, from the subtle element to gross element, the progression actually happens. It actually gradually comes about in that way. So that is how the whole cosmic manifestation comes into existence. Anyway, this thing we will see in many, many different purports and many, many different things in the second canto. So we will gradually open it up later on. So the extent of the cosmic phenomenon is calculated to be diametrically both ways 4 billion miles. So that means this is like 4 billion miles is something the diameter of the central portion of the universal shell, the central space that exists within the coverings. So then the covering of the universe begins, right? So this 4 billion miles is the central living space, you can say, within the universe, and then the covering starts. So the coverings of the universe begins. The first stratum of the covering is calculated to extend 80 million miles, and the subsequent coverings of the universe are respectively fire, effulgence, air, and ether, and one after another, each extending 10 times further than the previous covering. Oh no, the first covering is 80 miles thick, and second covering is 10 times of it, and third covering is 10 times of the previous, and things like that. So it's like it's really, now it looks really like a jail. The material world is a jail, where such thick coverings are made, and nobody can penetrate these things and go out. Liberation means to penetrate all these things and get out of this place, right? So that's liberation. So the fearless devotee of the Lord penetrate each one of them and ultimately reaches the absolute atmosphere where everything is of one and the same spiritual identity. So now if you see, the spirit soul cannot be checked by these coverings. If we have any material attachment, then the material body stays back, and if material body stays back, then we will not be able to penetrate these coverings, right? So a person has to be completely spiritualized, and he has to become completely purified so that he will not get stuck up in any of these layers, right? So that's the amazing aspect of this whole thing. It's like if you put your hand into a jar which has a very small opening, and then you know there is something which is there inside the jar, you caught hold of it, and now your fist has become so thick that you will not be able to you'll not be able to remove the fist out of the jar, right? So in the same way, if you are there within this material world, and if you have material attachment, then no, it is not possible for us to remove ourselves outside of this material world. It's not possible for us to get liberation. Liberation means to be completely purified of all material coverings, like a complete detachment. A person who gets from this world, he can actually pass through all these layers and cut across and get to the spiritual world. Otherwise, it's not possible. Right? So, okay. The devotee enters one of the Vaikuntha planets where he assumes exactly the same form as the Lord and engages in the loving transcendental service of the Lord. That is the highest perfection of devotional life. Beyond this, there is nothing to be desired or achieved by the perfect yogi. Okay. So next thing is small, you can read that. Granena gandham rasanena vairasam rupam cha drishtya swasanam tvachaiva shrothena chopyeta nabo gunatvam pranena chakutim upaiti yogi. The devotee thus surpasses the subtle object of different senses like aroma by smelling, the palate by tasting, vision by seeing forms, touch by contacting, the vibration of the ear by ethereal identification, and the sense organs by material activities. Right? So these are all different coverings that we have. Now we may just think that, okay, this is just a body that I have, but there are so many coverings that are there, and which will be technically explained in this one. So a devotee has to surpass all these coverings, right? So purport: beyond the material sky, there are subtle coverings resembling the elementary coverings of the universe. The gross coverings are a development of partial ingredients of the subtle causes. So it is like from the subtle causes, that is mind, intelligence, and false ego, and that's where the gross coverings gets manifested. So the subtle elements produce the gross elements, and it's not the vice versa. It's not the gross elements produce the subtle elements. It's the subtle elements, like the finer elements produce the grosser elements, right? So the yogi or devotee, along with liquidation of the gross elements, relinquishes the subtle cause like aroma by smelling, these pure spiritual, like aroma by spelling, the pure spiritual spark, the living entity, thus becomes completely cleansed of all material contamination to become eligible for entrance into the kingdom of God. So basically, like, no, all purification has to happen, and devotee has to be like fully purified of all material attachments. So when he is completely purified of all material attachments, as we were explaining, the hand put into a jar with a small mouth, if you catch hold of something inside the jar, your fist becomes big, and then you will not be able to take out your hand. So in the same way, no, if we have any material attachment in this world, we will get stuck up in this material world again and again. So if we become completely purified, then we can penetrate these different coverings of this world. And for the yogis, they have to consciously work on these various coverings. But for a devotee, he doesn't need to do this conscious effort. He just need to practice rendering service to the Supreme Lord, and everything else is taken care of by the Lord, and we don't need to do this mechanical process, right? So this is, in one way, when we study these things, we can understand the greatness of devotional service. The yogis, what all circus they do to get this liberation, and the devotees of the Lord, simply by rendering devotional service to the Lord, simply by offering foodstuffs to the Lord, simply by offering arati to the Lord, and simply by chanting the names of the Lord, we are able to achieve such great feats. We should be really very grateful to the Lord, right? So we should know such a difficult process, he has made it so easy for us. And we are just simply chanting the names of the Lord and trying to please him, and we can possibly get back to the Vaikuntha Loka by the grace of the Lord, right? So that's the greatness of the process of devotional service. Okay, so we will stop here and we will continue from Shloka 30 tomorrow. Hare Krishna. Antaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.